Hi everybody, this is Abdul Hamid and I hope you're having a lovely day. If you're a student from a country where English isn't spoken as a first language and you're applying to a university in an English-speaking country, then you're most likely going to be asked to take an English test. Universities in countries where English is a first language are the most attractive universities in the world today. Each year, hundreds of thousands and possibly millions of students from all over the world compete to get admission to the thousands of universities where the main language of instruction is English. The admission criteria these universities impose can be different, but they mainly consist of an internationally recognized high school diploma and an English proficiency test. There are several English proficiency tests out there. The most popular one is IELTS, of course, which is taken by almost half of international students worldwide. Many universities require international students to get an IELTS score of 6 or higher in order to apply. Some majors in some of the top universities are even asking for an IELTS 7 or IELTS 7.5 in order to grant admission. But here is something we tend to overlook. While an IELTS 7.5 can get you into a university, it is not enough and it doesn't mean that you will succeed in that university. In this video, we will take a deep and analytical look at how vastly different the English you actually need to be successful in university is from the English being tested in English tests like IELTS, TOEFL, PET, and others. We will see how international universities base their selection process on tests that do not really reflect students' abilities to be successful at those same universities. And I will show you what you can do to prepare yourself for university. Getting admission to a university is one thing, but being successful in university and graduating with high distinction is a whole lot different. In 2022, researchers from the Ontario Institute of Studies and Education at the University of Toronto in Canada published a paper called A Mixed Method Investigation into International University Students' Experience with Academic Language Demands. The authors of this paper talked to several international students who are studying at university in English. All of these students had taken an English proficiency test like IELTS and achieved the necessary scores to satisfy the university admission requirements. The researchers discovered that many students were frustrated with the unexpected level of language demands in their programs. Some of the international students did very well on their IELTS tests and achieved high scores, only to discover later that the reading, listening, and writing requirements in university are very different from what they were trained to do. IELTS and TOEFL reading, writing, and listening have very little in common with reading, writing, and listening in university. But before we take a look at what the differences are, let's first hear real testimonies from English as an additional language students about language demands based on their lived experience in university. All of these testimonies are from the paper written by Bruce Russell, Christine Barron, Yana Kim, and Eunice Uni Zhang. Their paper is open access and I highly recommend that you read it to get the full context. They also provide the perspective of the faculty, which is something I'm not going to discuss in this video. The first research question the researchers from the University of Toronto asked was, what are EAL students' perspectives about the extent to which English language tests used for university admission represent the target language demands? They unveiled three interrelated themes. The first one is the discrepancy between general language and discipline-specific language demands. Several students expressed surprise and frustration at how unprepared they were when it came to the actual English requirements once they started their university courses. Now, please keep in mind that we are not talking about some lazy students here. These are students who got top scores in their high school programs, studied intensively for their IELTS tests, and achieved high scores in it as well. They did all of this hard work only to discover that the kind of English used inside universities is very different from the English they were studying for the IELTS exam. Let's hear what one engineering student said about this.
I'm in engineering science, and so for us in the first 2 years, we have to take many different courses in the engineering field. For example, like biology. I need to take biology, and I don't understand anything. I had lots of trouble because there are so many terms. I get lost with all those terms.
Academic vocabulary is a major source of frustration for many EAL students in university across all majors. While preparing for academic IELTS writing task 1, students would spend hours and hours memorizing words and phrases describing trends like fall, decrease, decline, plummet, plunge, drop, collapse, deteriorate, dip, dive, slump, slide, go into free fall, and so on. But once in university, it becomes apparent that university professors don't really care about how many different ways a student can express a declining trend. What they actually care about is the student's mastery of real academic vocabulary. These are the technical and subject-specific words related to the student's major. Unfortunately, vocabulary isn't the only aspect that frustrated EAL international students. Writing and reading were also a huge source of frustration. The same study also reported that one economics student explained that before he went to university, the longest passage he ever wrote was 300 words. But in university, he's expected to write 15 pages and he has no training on how to do so. When it comes to reading, one student said,
"For reading questions in IELTS, we know the specific questions we need to answer after reading it, and there are some keywords we can search in the paragraphs. But for the reading in university, maybe the articles are not so structured like the readings in IELTS, so we don't know where to find the information at all."
And when these international EAL students were asked what advice they would give to new incoming students, one student said, "Don't be satisfied with your IELTS score." Being satisfied with a high IELTS score is a very dangerous thing. A high score in IELTS or any English proficiency test only means that you can have access to university, but it doesn't mean that you have what it takes to be successful in that university. In addition, the researchers we mentioned earlier unveiled another critical aspect. They showed that high scores in English proficiency tests gave students an inflated view of their own language ability. One engineering student said,
"I did really well in listening and reading. It's almost to a full mark. So I was confident in reading. But when I came here, praxis course requires us to do some research, to read a lot of documents. I feel like, for example, in 2 hours, my partner can complete a research, but I can only do like half of them. So when I read a website or something, I cannot know where is the focus."
So how can someone get a perfect score in reading and listening in IELTS and TOEFL but struggle with reading and listening in university? Well, these standard English proficiency tests are standardized tests at the end of the day. Many students take these tests multiple times and get so familiar with the exam structure that they can achieve high scores without actually improving their English. One engineering student said,
"You know, the first time I didn't do good because I didn't really know the instructions the way I should do it. And the second time I did better because I know how to do the test. But actually, for my English level, I don't think I improved."
And another student added,
And especially for IELTS reading, if you use the technique, you can get a high mark, but it doesn't really mean you really can read a passage and understand it fully. It just means you know how to do questions.
And knowing how to answer questions, particularly comprehension questions, isn't really a useful skill in university. News and magazine articles, academic papers, and books don't come with comprehension questions. Bruce Russell and his colleagues summed up the discrepancy between the English tests students take before admission and the actual language demands perfectly as follows. English proficiency tests like IELTS and TOEFL evaluate students' abilities in writing short essays and answering comprehension questions based on both reading and listening texts, and they give higher importance to speed and efficiency at the expense of depth and thoroughness. Let's now see some specific differences between how language is assessed in English proficiency tests and how it is experienced in university. We will continue taking the IELTS test as an example. The only reason I'm using IELTS as an example is because it is the most common English proficiency test. In IELTS listening, test takers need to answer 40 questions in response to 4 recordings. But the problem here is that all 4 recordings are in standard English accents. Whether the accent is standard British, standard American or Canadian or Australian, the speakers in IELTS tests always have a very mild and sometimes overly standard English. But this is not always the case in university. Universities don't hire professors because of their accent. Professors are hired for their research and academic qualifications. Most universities, and especially top universities worldwide, don't care what professors look like, sound like, or where they come from. All that matters is that they are at the top of their research fields. And while you may go to a university in London, your professors will not all be from London. They may not even be from England. In most universities where English is the language of instruction, there are professors from India, Spain, Senegal, Morocco, China, Germany, and Argentina, and many other countries. While these professors may not have a standard British accent, they are professors who give lectures, give exams, and assign grades. When it comes to reading, the discrepancy between IELTS reading requirements and reading in university is much more significant. In IELTS reading, students are given 3 reading passages from academic sources and a series of 40 questions related to the passages. Several aspects make this exam challenging, the most significant of which is the timing. Students have 60 minutes to complete the entire IELTS reading test. Because of the time limitation, IELTS students are advised to adopt a number of reading strategies like skimming, scanning, and identifying keywords in order to go through the reading passages quickly and answer the maximum number of questions in the shortest time. IELTS reading questions are standard comprehension questions. They evaluate the ability to locate specific information in texts, make inferences, and recognize the writer's opinion, attitudes, and purposes. These skills are very useful. I'm not saying they are not, but these are not the only skills you will need in university. Reading in university is a completely different thing from reading in IELTS or even reading done in most English exams. In IELTS, TOEFL, and other English exams, students read in order to answer questions. In university, students are expected to read in order to learn. Your future university professors will give you an incredible amount of reading to do. The purpose of this reading isn't so you can answer a bunch of questions. No, most of the time, there are no questions given. The purpose is so you can learn about your major in university. Because most of the learning in college is done through reading. And when there are questions related to the reading, these questions never test your ability to locate specific information in the texts. No. These questions require you to understand the ideas and concepts in the reading passages within a greater context. So you will be constantly asked to compare and contrast the ideas, opinions, thoughts, experiences, and experiments of certain writers with those of others. While the answers to all IELTS reading questions are in the given texts, in university, the answers to reading questions are almost never found inside the given reading materials. As you climb up the higher education ladder, reading gets more and more intense. You will no longer be asked to read in order to learn. You will be asked to read in order to analyze and evaluate. While you read in university, you are always looking at what you read with a critical eye. You will be constantly looking for bias, evaluating perspectives, comparing and contrasting views, and investigating the reliability and trustworthiness of what you read. None of these essential reading skills are included in the standard English proficiency tests available today. These skills are what make the difference between achieving success in university or not. We observe the same discrepancy in writing as well. In IELTS writing, test takers are required to write 150 words to describe visual information, like a graph or a diagram, and 250 words to write an essay in response to a question or a statement. The issue here is that the chances of you being asked to do a similar writing assignments in university are almost zero. University professors will almost never ask you to write a few hundred words where you just state your own personal opinion on a topic. As a matter of fact, writing in university is almost never based on the student's own opinion. Writing is always done as a response to other texts. Yes, writing and reading are combined in university. Students are always asked to write about what they have read. Writing in university across all majors is always dependent on skills like summarizing, which is the ability to condense texts by focusing only on significant ideas, paraphrasing, reporting what other authors have said using different language, synthesizing, combining information from different sources, and referencing, acknowledging the sources of information used in the written work. These skills, among others, are everything in university. There are no written assignments that do not include these skills, and most university professors evaluate students' work based on how well the students demonstrate mastery of these skills. But the problem is that these skills are completely absent from English proficiency tests that are available today. A student can have an IELTS 7.5, 8, or even 9 in IELTS writing without knowing how to summarize, paraphrase, synthesize, and reference. And now, with AI, more and more professors are supplementing written assignments with spoken formats like a Viva or an interview. Such formats require specific speaking features that are completely overlooked by the speaking exam in any current English proficiency test. English proficiency tests separate the 4 macro skills. Each skill is evaluated separately, but in university there is no separation between reading, listening, writing, and speaking. You write what you read, you present and explain what you wrote, and you interact and respond to questions and observations you hear from your professors and peers. If you have the option of choosing a high school qualification, choose one that incorporates academic English requirements into its curriculum and assessments. But the truth is that most international high school qualifications do not include academic English requirements in their curricula and assessments. They may have posters mentioning things like critical thinking hanging on the walls inside classrooms, and they may have their students go to a lab every now and then. But the reality is that in most popular international high school qualifications, the only means of assessing students is standard exams that are taken at the end of the semester or the academic year. And even if your students get several A+ grades or A stars in those exams, they may not even know what an in-text citation is. So if you're currently studying at a high school where your performance is only measured via standardized tests, then you should do some self-study to prepare yourself for university. Because the skills you need to know in order to be successful are not really taught in high school. Luckily, there are plenty of resources available online that can teach you the skills you need to succeed in college. And this is what you need to be good at before you go to university. You have to be good at reading to learn. I'll just say it in the simplest way. If you can read 500 words a day, you should read 1,000. You just need to read and read a lot. Read to understand, read to learn, not to answer some specific questions. And as you read, your general understanding of what you will study in university improves. And as a bonus, your technical vocabulary improves as well. As for what to read, you can just do a quick internet search or even ask AI to recommend a series of reading materials for first-year students in whatever major you are hoping to study in university. The second skill is writing about what you read. Every time you read something new, write about it. Summarize what you read by condensing the ideas and writing only the main ideas. Paraphrase what the authors write. Basically, try to write the ideas, information, and opinions you read using your own language. This is very hard, but it's necessary. And as you read, always compare and contrast different opinions and views belonging to different authors. Also, you have to improve your listening in order to prepare yourself for university listening. And the best way to do so is to listen to university lectures. The gap you have between completing high school and starting university should be spent listening to and watching first year university lectures. There are thousands and thousands of free university lectures on YouTube alone. Not only you will learn about what you are going to study in university, but you will also accustom your ears to listening to actual university professors who can have all kinds of accents and speech patterns. Lastly, you can also consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I will be uploading videos where I explain some of the key university skills like paraphrasing, evaluating sources, and so on. So if you feel that you have learned something of substance by watching my video, activate the notification bell and share my video with your friends. Always keep in mind that what matters the most isn't getting into university, it is succeeding in university and beyond. And while the road is arduous, it is a road worth taking. I wish you all the best and thank you very much for listening.